And welcome to the Jon Justice Show. Remember, you can listen to my weekly radio show on Twin Cities News Talk Monday through Friday, 6 until 9 a.m. live on the Iheartradio app. You can also catch up with the podcast daily. And thank you so much for checking out another episode. The mainstream media is in big, big trouble right now. A lot of news last week of the ratings collapse in the wake of Trump's victory 2 weeks ago. And I have questions about how the media is going to recover. First off, I'm not surprised about the ratings collapse for your CNN, your ABC, your MSNBC. I went through something similar, not nearly as egregious, mind you, but back in 2022, during the midterm elections, the state elections here in Minnesota, we ended up suffering a massive loss at the ballot box in 2022. The DFL, which is the Democrat Party here in the state of Minnesota, they ended up grabbing the trifecta. Governor Tim Walz who ran for VP. Thank the good Lord Almighty, he ended up failing and losing the election with Kamala Harris. I've mentioned often to people that Governor Walz being picked to be Kamala Harris and her VP was the greatest thing that could have happened to the show, but it would have been the worst thing that would have happened to the country. But during that 2022 election, the Democrats here in Minnesota, they grabbed all the power, much in the same way that Donald Trump and the GOP did in D.C. during this election cycle. They had a trifecta in the legislature and the governor of Tim Walz at the helm. And they went in fully on a far-left Marxist agenda. And they also paid the price here in Minnesota. Not as great in terms of the victories that other people saw around the country, but the Republicans were able to go and pick up seats here in Minnesota and break the trifecta in the legislature, in the House here in Minnesota. So that was fantastic news. But relating to what's happened to the mainstream media in the wake of the election, something similar happened on my weekly radio show. We saw a drop in the ratings after 2022, and I completely understand why. If I had a nickel for every Iheartradio app talkback, phone call, and email that I got from friends of the show who were either moving out of Minnesota or telling me that they weren't going to be listening to any political commentary anymore, I probably could have gone and retired. People were frustrated, and they didn't want to hear all about what had transpired moving forward. Now, thankfully, that audience ended up coming back, which brings me back to the mainstream media here in just a moment. So I'm not surprised that the mainstream media had this massive, on the left, with the liberal bias, this massive ratings collapse that took place. Now, I know there's been talk that potentially some of these media outlets could be put up for sale and maybe conservative outlets would go and pick them up. We are seeing I don't want to say resurgence, but a surge in popularity of conservatism, the likes of which I've never seen in my 29 years of radio broadcasting. But I don't buy into this fact that CNN or MSNBC or the rumors that CNN and MSNBC are going to be going away anytime soon. No, I think what's going to end up happening is something similar to what happened with my show in Minneapolis in 2022, is that you'll see a dip, but people will eventually start to come back as people get back into the habit of watching the news again. The question is, what does the mainstream media do at that point in time? The Democrats right now are doing some soul searching, and I think they're going to have a difficult job in finding a direction in which to go, because to abandon their far left radical Marxist views that brought about so much of what people voted against 2 weeks ago in this election would be to change an abundance of their core beliefs. I don't know how many moderate Democrats are still left out there. I think there's a lot of moderate Democrats among the voting electorate. Part of the reason why Trump and the Republicans won so well in that election, I think a lot of people sat home or they ended up voting for Trump. And we saw some of that in how well Trump did versus how some of the down ticket races didn't go as well as we had hoped, even though they grabbed the trifecta. No, my expectation is some of those viewers will come back. And again, the question is, how does the mainstream media react to that? Do they wise up and go back to more credible journalism? Or do they continue to make the mistakes that they've made in the past, knowing what we all know now? And that is a majority of the public rejected what the mainstream media was saying about Kamala Harris. They're not trusted anymore. You see, my expectation of what's going to happen heading into next year, and I don't think most people are prepared for it, my expectation going into 2025 is that the mainstream media is going to do what the mainstream media always does. They're going to continue to be in the tank for liberals, and I expect that based off of what we've seen in the negative reaction to Trump's cabinet and administration picks, they're going to continue to double down. Every single move that any of the, again, cabinet members, the positions that Trump has filled, any moves that they make, whether it comes to national security, immigration, our health of the country, what takes place overseas with the conflicts, it's going to be met with ridiculous, over-the-top criticism as they continue to go and villainize, demonize Trump, J.D. Vance, and Republicans. And it's a gamble. It may be able to restore some of their ratings, but people aren't buying their garbage anymore. And that's what this past election was about. They weren't buying into Kamala being the greatest nominee ever when prior to that June 27th debate and people waking up to Joe Biden's cognitive decline, the commentary written around Kamala Harris was she was one of the worst VPs the country had ever seen. And that wasn't just coming from Republicans. It was coming from Democrats, too. And even before that, if you remember, there were a litany of articles written about where is Kamala Harris right now, our VP. She was never a good candidate. And so to continue down that path for the mainstream media, if they are able to regain viewership, I think they're going to be in the same boat that they were in before, lacking credibility and simply being an extension of the Democrat Party. Listen, if they do, great. I think it's better for the conservative movement. I think it's better for conservatives if they continue to show their bias over and over again. Now, I say that with a bit of tongue-in-cheek because what's best for America is complete and total transparency. What's best for America is if the mainstream media were to wake up and begin having all the difficult conversations and being honest about these issues. Take, for example, and I'll just give you a couple here, like book banning. And I'm talking about the issues that, in the grand scheme of things, aren't nearly as important, as when it comes to money in our bank account and the cost of, the necessities in life. But there are issues that just annoyed me because they were such blatant lies. The issue of book banning, right? There was no book banning taking place. It was book curating, and we've always done book curating. We've always known as a society when we see pornographic material. We can identify it. Can't really describe it, but you know it when you see it. And to have individuals, regardless, because it wasn't just people on the right. There were plenty of people of faith and different types of faith that were just as frustrated to see this explicit material being available for children underage in our schools. And they didn't want to see that there because you don't provide that for kids. The backlash of the election or the election victory for Trump was because people got sick and tired of lies like that. They knew it was wrong. They knew it was wrong when you had parents showing up to school board meetings and either had photographs of the images, these explicit images in these books, or tried to read text and they were silenced by the board members because it was inappropriate. And yet they refused to go and answer the question or answer for why, if you're not going to read it in a public forum like that, I can't read it on my show. Why is that acceptable for young people? Boys playing in girls' sports. The rising cost of our goods and going to the grocery store, and yet to have that same media that I'm talking about tell us over and over again, along with the Harrison Walls and Biden before him, that the economy was great. No, people are tired of being lied to. So I'm going to be very interested heading into 2025 which way the mainstream media actually goes. Because we would be in a much better place if they were open and honest about these particular issues. And just to cite a few of those examples. On another note, before I sat down to do today's show, I was posting some content up on TikTok, because that's where the young people are, right? You can find me there at the Jon Justice, Jon, on TikTok. So I've been just as entertained as so many people with the meltdown videos of people that simply aren't dealing with the results of this election well. And I question the validity of a lot of these videos. Typically, if you're really that scared, you're not posting how fearful you are online. I think it's a lot of anger and people lashing out. But I saw a brand new one today that I wanted to share with you. So last week, I saw a host of videos of people saying that something was up and that, don't worry, Trump's not going to become the president. Kamala Harris is being quiet because there's a plan in place, but I can't give you the details, right? They're just sharing what other people have told them, and they're getting a lot of views on TikTok because of it. Well, now they actually have something they can point to. And when I say they, I mean the individuals that have not reached the acceptance phase of grief. And it goes by the name of Stephen Spoonamore. Now, you probably haven't heard of Stephen Spoonamore. Why would you? He's a grifter, and I'll tell you why he's a grifter. So apparently this guy, some kind of commentator, analyst, whatever. I watched a couple of videos of him so you didn't have to, and it was clear just watching the videos what this guy's shtick is. He's raising his own attention. He's got a Substack, Stephen Spoonamore. I'll give him a little bit of credit since I'm talking about him. I credit in terms of where you can go and find him if you're interested. He wrote this letter to Kamala Harris, essentially saying that he can't specifically cite any irregularities. And I thought it was interesting. These were only happening in swing states, right? Of course. He couldn't cite any specific irregularities, except to say that he doesn't trust that the voting machines were secure, and he believes there should be a recount done in all of these swing states. And that if there was, we would find out that this election was not on the up and up, and Trump would not make it to Inauguration Day, and it would indeed be Kamala Harris who becomes our 47th president. It's interesting because I know that you're listening or you're watching, you're shaking your head going, boy, all of this sounds familiar. Of course it does. Because the very same faction on the left that tried to go and wanted to go and did lock people up for their election denialism is doing exactly the same thing that they claimed the right was doing over the course of the past few years. Let's be honest, though. You want to look at irregularities? Go find the graph. There's a graph out there that shows 2016 and 2024 with 2020 right there in the middle, and there's a big old pop of some 10 million plus votes that can't be accounted for from the previous election or this election. Isn't that interesting? Now, as I've said in previous videos, I'm glad that things played out the way that they did. I would have rather had not to have had to endure the past 4 years of Harris and Biden. But that being said, at the same time, I'm glad that Trump is returning to office, not having this being a consecutive 2-term cycle, because I feel like he's a much wiser individual now than he was before. He's now actually a seasoned politician who I believe truly has the best interest of the country at heart. And winning this election, and based off of his cabinet appointments and his administration position appointments, the very ones that I believe the mainstream media will attempt to use against him heading into next year, he's not messing around. Donald Trump understands the mandate that I put forward and that probably you put forward in voting for Trump and J.D. Vance and the Republicans across the country. And it seems clear in the individuals that he has chosen to round out his administration. I'm really excited for what is to come in the future. And I don't think that would have happened if there had been another consecutive Trump term. So everything happens for a reason. It's a belief that I carry with me, along with my belief in the Lord, God Almighty. And I believe that, all things do work together for good. And that means even sometimes the bad stuff. So I'm glad things played out the way that they did. But you can't go back and look at that 2020 election without sort of scratching your head going, where did all those votes go? Well, at the moment, you've got a whole bunch of individuals dealing with the outcome of the election, refusing to accept what has happened, and now they're doing exactly the same thing that they accused Republicans of doing. You can call them QAnon at this point in time. But if you want to go check out Stephen Spoonamore for yourself, go ahead. I just was laughing. The guy's a grifter, and good on him, man. You know, he's going to get a lot of attention for his Substack. There's a whole bunch of people that are talking about him on TikTok, and heck, I even talked about him here. Listen, Trump is going to make it to your inauguration day. He's going to be inaugurated. He's going to be the 47th president. And guess what? The country is going to be better for it. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited that people are waking up right now. I'm excited that people were paying better attention, more close attention than even I expected or even I believed, because we were all a little gun shy. We thought that red wave was going to take place in 2022, and it simply didn't manifest. And I remember broadcasting live from the GOP election night party down by the Mall of America at the Radisson Blu. We're looking at the returns, and it was playing out very similar to the way things looked in 2016 when Trump beat Hillary. And in those moments prior to the call of Pennsylvania, I remember being at that same location in that same room during that election and how excited and jazzed everybody was because they knew Trump was going to win. That didn't happen a couple of weeks ago because people were so burned the last time. And I think everybody was expecting late after midnight ballot drops to go and throw the election in favor of Kamala Harris. And thank the good Lord Almighty that didn't happen. And I'll leave you with this too, and it's a point that people have missed. You don't need to know this, but perhaps you voted for Kamala Harris. I want to do you a bit of a favor. If you want to know why Kamala Harris won, it's really, really simple. Just look at it from a rational, common sense perspective. Take the commentary that I provided earlier. She was never a good candidate. She got out running for the nomination for president. Before she even reached her home state, she was so unpopular as a candidate, going back to 2018 and 2019. She was unpopular as a vice president. People were wondering, where is Kamala Harris in this administration? She was looked at as one of the worst VPs ever at a time in the country where people are hurting. You can tell people that the economy's fine all you want, but they know different when they go to the grocery store. And the typical goods that they buy are much more expensive than they were before when they go and fill up and put gas in their car. When they look at what's taking place on the world stage and the number of wars that are being waged right now, where none of those wars took place during the time that Trump was in office for the first 4 years. No, they were tired of being lied to. Common sense would tell you. And that's why I thought that Trump was going to win. I believed he was going to win. Because common sense would tell you, even down to a real specific data point, and that is no president has ever won re-election with as dismal economic and approval numbers as Joe Biden had. And Kamala Harris, for as much as she or didn't distance herself from Biden, she was essentially the incumbent candidate, even if they did boot Biden off the ticket. And then you get into that issue of the fact that she was essentially just placed atop of the ticket without any real votes. Yes, I know the electoral votes of the DNC. I get all of that, but you understand what I'm saying. People didn't go to the ballot box to go and vote for Kamala Harris to be VP. Therein lies my point. Common sense said that Trump was going to win, and he did. And thank the good Lord Almighty that he did. Hey, thank you so much for checking out the Jon Justice Show. Again, you can catch my weekly radio show Monday through Friday, 6 to 9. If you're in Minneapolis, it's on Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM. Or you can listen live, 6 to 9 a.m. Central Time on the Iheartradio app and get caught up on the podcast where you found this podcast. And if you're watching and enjoying this on YouTube, I hope you will subscribe to my channel so you never miss any of my commentary. Last thing I'll leave you with is I am also an author. You can see the poster in the background and the book right over my shoulder. I've written a science fiction space opera series called Embark. I wrote it for adults, but it's great for ages 11 plus. I wrote it out of my love of Star Wars and wanting to provide and create something akin to Star Wars, but written by a conservative. It doesn't beat you over the head with politics. If you read the stories and had no idea who I was as an author, you probably wouldn't even realize that, I was a conservative news talk show host. That being said, they are fun science fiction, space opera, adventure stories based off of the battle between good versus evil, freedom and liberty versus tyranny and oppression. And again, 7 books in all in the series, available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook at Amazon.com. And I hope you head on over to Amazon.com and check out the description and pick up book 1 in your preferred format. So be sure to follow me so you never miss any of the content. And I hope wherever you are happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. I'll talk to you again real soon.